We've got some new and interesting details about how Michael Korvac, the rumored new big bad to the MCU, will be introduced. We're gonna break that down. Plus, I wanna talk about Rob Liefeld's scorched earth Twitter thread, all about how DC Comics is driving itself off a cliff. I'm sure the comment section on this one's gonna be awesome.
It's like the news, but for nerds. Subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Today's shout out goes to Nick Wiltshire. Indeed, Michael Korvac is from Earth 691. Make sure you stay to the end of this video where we will ask another nerd card question. What is up, everybody? Happy Wednesday to you. I'm, of course, Josh. This is the Den of Nerds. And guys, I want to thank you. 3,000 likes yesterday. Mission accomplished.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
Den of Nerds fam, I need your help. Let's get this one up to 3K likes as well. Smash that button, help us out. All right, so let's talk about these Rob Liefeld comments first. This stuff, man. Wow, Rob Liefeld. No holds bar on Twitter, man. So if you don't know what I'm talking about or who I'm talking about, Rob Liefeld is the prolific comic book artist that created such great characters as Deadpool, Shatterstar, and many other awesome Marvel characters, and a bunch of Image characters as well. He was a part of the Image founders, bunch of dudes that left Marvel Comics, started Image, and were making a bajillion dollars. And he went to Twitter recently to talk about DC Comics, saying some, well, pretty ridiculous things. Now, his tweets have since been deleted, and he's actually really not using Twitter anymore because of all the backlash he got from this, but I'm on CBR.com reading what he said, so check this out. He said, DC Comics gonna drive off a cliff here real soon. Gotta get my popcorn. Then he said, thank God they have Batman to act as their Tylenol, aspirin, laughing gas, and more. Batman will fix it. And honestly, he went on and said a ton of crazy stuff. He said, like, you know, if DC just caved, like Jim Lee could just focus on drawing the X-Men again, which is like, what? He also made a statement because a ton of people were, I'm sure, hassling him about this, talking about the different sales and how the industry works. And he basically said, yo, guys, I've sold millions of comic books. I've made a ton of money in comics. I know what it takes to sell comics. If you want to try to tell me about selling comics, I'm gonna block you real fast. Like real fast. And the thing about that is I totally agree with him. Like, dude, Rob Liefeld, say what you will about his art style, you know, all the patches, you know, the weird feet to shoulder ratio, but the guy made badass comics. They just spoke to the audience that was reading comic books at the time. They ignited people's imaginations, and more importantly than anything, they sold issues. They sold issues. Now, as many of you know who've been watching the channel for some time, I used to work in comics as a writer and editor, and I did a lot of small press stuff, so wasn't on the big stage at all, but I know a lot of people in that industry because that industry is like really small. And I don't like talking about comics and the drama of the comic book industry simply because I do know so many of these people, and all I'll say is that this industry is filled with people with massive egos who are also incredibly sensitive. But here is, from my perspective of being inside that industry, what I think about what Rob Liefeld said. I think, first of all, he's more right than he is wrong. Comic book sales are down everywhere, like literally everywhere, and DC itself is not really experiencing the turmoil of something like Marvel, but I think there's a lot of ancillary factors to consider, and maybe some of those reasons are why Liefeld is specifically targeting DC with his criticism. I mean, the DCEU has really not performed well. There's a lot of animosity still between that brand and fans out there, and even though Aquaman and Shazam seem to be, you know, good films, something of a turnaround, there's still a lot of confusion with what DC films are, you know, how are they gonna move forward, what's going on with that universe. It's basically a mess on the cinematic side. The DC Universe app, for all intents and purposes, is a failure. It failed to uptick the stock price. It failed to attract creators to the platform. It doesn't have a good subscriber base. A lot of its shows are being canceled. It's just flat out a failure. Several months ago, there was the Bat Wang controversy where DC Comics showed Batman's penis. And then after that, a lot of people at Warner Brothers came down to DC Comics and were like, yo, we're gonna keep a pretty tight watch on what you're doing now because we're about to release like 3 Matt Reeves Batman films and we need like $1 billion out of that franchise. What are you doing showing people Batman penis? So the corporate overlords are now, you know, really involved with what's going on in DC Comics. So there's a lot of turmoil there just in DC in general. Now, I think Marvel's actually in just as bad of a place, if not worse, as far as actual sales go. But the difference is, of course, that the MCU is doing incredibly well and that Disney has, well, oodles and oodles of money. They probably never let Marvel Comics, you know, completely completely dissipate, and they can trim a lot of the fat there and really not need that division to be super profitable. Warner Brothers is just in a different spot. They really do need these comic books to be doing better, and especially because I think they invested so heavily in DC Universe. Yeah, they're hurting real bad. Now, I brought this up mostly because I want to know what you guys think about this, especially if you're a comic book reader, if you've been a fan of this industry for a long time. What do you think about the current state of comics? Do you agree with Liefeld? Do you think that DC is driving over a cliff? And for the record, I know there's a ton of turmoil in the comic book industry and in those communities about like identity politics and how, you know, certain ideologies are maybe taking over or are bad for the industry. And I'll just say this to that point. I definitely see that there is damage being done by some of those issues. But for me, guys, that's not even close to the real problem with comics. And comics themselves have been on a decline for the past 10 years. I want to know what you think about the comic book industry. Let me know in the comment section below. All right, let's talk about Michael Korvac and this crazy leaked information about how he will be introduced into the MCU. Now, this actually comes from the same leaker we talked about yesterday, the Marvel Scoop Master. They're doing the Lord's work, these Reddit leakers. And I should mention, of course, that this guy has been verified. He's gotten a lot of leaks right, so we gotta at least believe a little bit of what he's saying. And so in a recent Reddit post, he talks about how Michael Korvac will be introduced in Captain Marvel 2. And so for starters, he's hearing that the film will likely take place between the first Captain Marvel movie and Avengers Endgame. That's pretty interesting. It will focus on the Kree and the Skrull, continue to talk about their conflict. Part of the film will revolve around Carol tracking down a Kree super weapon, and it ends up being Michael Korvac. Now, because of the similarities between Michael Korvac being developed as a Kree weapon and of course Carol Danvers being developed as a Kree weapon, you know, they form a bond and they try to, you know, really understand each other. Possibly even have some super powered romantic scenes. But either way, I guess this guy turns heel and tries to destroy the Kree. And interestingly enough, even though Carol hates the Kree, she stops him from destroying them completely. And apparently the opportunity here is because, you know, Korvac will be so strong that he'll really be able to give Carol Danvers a run for her money, and we'll have these two very powerful characters fighting each other. That seems awesome. Apparently it'll sort of end with her defeating him, but him sort of escaping. Maybe she lets him escape because of her feelings for him, or maybe he just tricks her and escapes. Either way, this will lead to him coming back in the future of the MCU even stronger than he was in Captain Marvel 2. Now, my opinion on this is that it's freaking dope. And I've told you guys this before, but one of the best things about bringing Carol Danvers into the MCU is that it allows us to bring in even more crazy, powerful characters. I'm talking Sentry in the Void, I'm talking Hercules, I'm talking Michael Korvac, Adam Warlock, Magus, and so many more. But this, you know, is an example of them doing that. That's dope. I also love the fact that it'll focus on the Kree-Skrull War. I think that's really freaking sweet. But I tell you what I'm not crazy about is the film taking place before Endgame. I'd really like to see what's going on after Endgame. Now, as a small aside, if it takes place during Endgame, like during that 5-year gap in Endgame, that would actually be pretty sweet. I would like that, but I'm just not crazy about continuously going back in time and filling out information. Like, I want to just move ahead in this universe. It's so interesting that we've got this time now. Again, just to clarify, these are leaks that are on Reddit, so, you know, take it with a grain of salt. The guy does have a good track record though, so this could be the case. Also, this is very early in the process of making this film. This could be storyboards, this could be basic plot outline. A lot might change before the actual film comes out, but this sort of just gives us a general idea of how they want to use the Michael Korvac character in Captain Marvel 2. What do you guys think about this? Do you think this would be pretty dope? How do you feel about the film taking place before Endgame? Let me know any and every thought you're having about this in the comment section below. Now let's check the nerd card before we get out of here. I want to know what DC comic book writer was recently removed from writing Batman before his run was said to be over. It was a big DC news thingy. What writer was taken off Batman recently? Answer that question in the comment section below. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.